Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd trial has begun. We're at the moment a very early stage, jury selection, and it's clear that this is going to be a very difficult and a very controversial trial. The media, at no surprise there, have generally done a very bad job in reporting the circumstances that led to the death of George Floyd and the nature of the criminal trial that is about to commence. The media generally do a very bad job when it comes to criminal trial. They're nearly always on the side of the prosecutors, and they nearly always suggest to their audience that the case is a slam dunk, prosecutors are going to win the case comfortably, the evidence is overwhelming, and so on. And so people are often very surprised, because they don't know that much about what's really going on. People are often surprised when the verdict goes the other way. We saw this in the O.J. Simpson case. We saw it a couple of years ago with the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin case. Saw it also in the, going back now away.
Rodney King.
Exactly, that's what the one I was going to say. Rodney King. Again, the audience, people were caught by surprise because they weren't following the case very closely and were relying on media reports. We don't know exactly what the in terms of exactly what the case against Derek Chauvin will be. Derek Chauvin is, of course, the policeman who famously had his neck on George Floyd, but he's the most reviled man not only in the United States but throughout the world. However, what we do know is we have an autopsy report that said that Floyd did not die of asphyxiation. The autopsy report said that there were no bruises on Floyd's neck that would have caused death. It said that he had lethal amounts of fentanyl and methamphetamine inside his system. And we know something about the police procedure in Minnesota, which states quite clearly that the method that Chauvin was using to restrain Floyd, having his knee on the neck of the suspect, is something that is in use regularly. It's part of police training manual and has never led to a fatality. And in fact, we know, because we've seen the footage of this, that Chauvin didn't seem to think he was doing anything wrong. So that's...
He knew he was being filmed.
Exactly, he knew he was being filmed. Everybody had their telephone cameras out and they were filming him. So he, if you look at his face, he seemed quite calm about what was going on. So that's on the one side. Now, of course, the prosecutors will have other things to say. After all, he did have his knee on his neck for quite a while. Particularly, he continued for about 4 or 5 minutes when Floyd was already making no movement. He seemed to have become lifeless. Maybe he was already dead, but he continued to have his knee there. So there's the other side to it. The problem arises, which is how can he get a fair trial? Right. And we've already seen from the first of the jury selections is that some of the potential jurors are expressing their fear. They do not think that they can give a fair hearing to the case because they're afraid of physical violence. They're afraid of people coming to their house, burning down their house, threatening their families and whatever. And this is a very serious situation, because how can you then have any kind of criminal justice if jurors are simply afraid of intimidation? And how can anyone expect to get a fair trial if there's a likelihood that people will just vote for guilt because they don't want the to be threatened and indeed murdered by angry mobs? Peter, what's your take?
Well, I said Rodney King because I think it's most akin to that, because that was filmed as well. And really what the media wants to portray this trial as is a white officer killing a man of color that had been apprehended. It's a very simple narrative, but there's a lot going on here. Of course, the blood work done on Floyd after I guess part of his an autopsy. I mean, this guy was pumped up, really pumped up.
Right.
And from what we understand, when you look more closely at this, he was resisting arrest. He was in the car before it happened, and he said, "I can't breathe." That's when he was in the car,
That's right.
not on the pavement.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And of course, you rightfully point out in such a cool manner, leveled manner, is that, these are our police procedures. Maybe they're bad procedures. Okay. Maybe that will be the result of this here. But the officer that is being charged, he was doing it by the book as he understood it. And of course, one of the things when you look at the coverage, almost no one, I mean, you really almost have to go into alternative media to get a bit of a biography on Floyd. He was not a good guy, all right? I'm sorry, he wasn't. Yes. He was had many brushes with the law. Apparently, at one point in time, he pulled a knife on a pregnant woman. He was passing counterfeit money around. That doesn't, but of course you go to the default position, but that doesn't mean he should have been killed. Well, the thing is we have to find out how he died, okay, before we can start apportioning blame. Now, you're absolutely right. I think it's really quite pitiful in many ways that George Floyd has to be the poster boy for this, because he had a criminal record. He did resist arrest, and he died in police custody. Anytime somebody dies in police custody, it is very, very bad anywhere in the world. Right. And really, what the public trial of this is just the video, and that's it. Yeah. Okay, of course, all of the people in media don't know anything about science, don't know anything about medicine, don't know anything about police procedures. Right. They really don't know much about anything, to be honest with you, except for to raise the flames, okay, throw kerosene on it, because for them it's part of their business model. They clicks and eyeballs and getting people outraged, and it'll all end up being about race, okay, which is of course what the liberal media wants, because they won't talk about why, a third of the children in the country are hungry, okay, something like that, okay.
Right. No, I think that's right. It's a very hard one to show that it's a matter of race, because it is a matter of police procedure. It's in the manual. I mean, this is what you do. Now, why do police do it? Well, it's what happens when suspects resist arrest. The most foolish thing you can do is to resist arrest. It's never going to end well. I mean, the police aren't just going to give up and go away. It's not part of their training to say, okay, well, he doesn't want to be arrested today. Fine, goodbye. They don't operate like that. So it ends badly. Now, the point about Floyd is, as you said, he started doing this, right at the beginning. He was still in the car, that he couldn't breathe. And it's apparent, I mean, again, we find this out from the internet, that this is a standard procedure with him. He was arrested in 2019, and he did the same thing then as well. So it's obviously he does this partly to gain time, maybe hoping that the police will give up, but is also trying to get rid of evidence. I mean, he had fake $20 bill on him. He had drugs on him. So this whole thing of, take you out of the car, put you back in the car and so on are a way of trying to dispose of evidence during the process. So, that again isn't reported in the media. The media reported as police brutality, a white cop taking on a black suspect. So what will happen when the trial starts, it could be quite a while before it starts, is, people are going to be very surprised by this. They don't, none of this has been reported in the mainstream media. I mean, so all of this information that we get, what was actually in the autopsy report, even those cameras, the police cameras during the arrest, and everything that we know, which you were talking about, that he was complaining about being unable to breathe, which we know from the police cameras, it's hardly been reported. I mean, other than I think Tucker Carlson reported this.
Yeah, I mean,
no one
it
even on
reported that he said, "I can't breathe on the pavement." No, it happened before.
Exactly.
And another thing is, we have to look at police procedure. It's really easy to say the cops rough people up and they go over the line. But if you're in uniform and you're dealing with people that are high on drugs, have some kind of cocktail of drugs in their system, they can be very violent. I mean, the fact of the matter is, George Floyd was a big man. Okay, he was big.
That's a very important point. He was very big, much bigger than the cops. I mean, if you look at his size, he's much bigger than them. So in other words, if it comes to a physical confrontation, he always has the advantage over them, and that's what often leads to these extreme police measures to restrain suspects.
There was a few months or weeks or months later, I don't remember what city it was, but there was a person of color, a guy that he fell asleep in a drive-through of like a Burger King or something like that. He just fell asleep, okay? And then and it's all video taped, okay? And they have a very friendly conversation with him. And over the course of the conversation, the suspect continues to change his story, and he appears to be under the influence. And then he looked for a second because he's under the influence. He's obviously afraid. Maybe he was worried that it would be determined that he had a police record. Maybe there was a warrant on him. He was afraid, okay? And then he grabbed the taser. Oh, that's a bad thing to do, okay? Because just like you said, if someone grabs your firearm or your taser, you can't let them go. You'll lose your job.
Absolutely, of course. And that was a very interesting case, because that was again a very big case, and I think the trial of that cop will be sometime, I guess, in the near future. But the point was, yes, he was under the influence. He was sitting behind the steering wheel. The cop just couldn't let that go. You can't just let somebody that this guy is under the influence, he's just going to drive away because goes and kills somebody 10 minutes later.
He fell asleep. He fell asleep with the engine running.
Right.
Okay, a vehicle is a weapon if it is not used properly. Okay, so there was obligated. See, this is going to be. See, you and I are having a rational discussion about it. On what really happened, the forensic things I will be interested in, because obviously we don't want to have something like this happen again. Okay, but it's already been decided. That videotape is it. Right. Okay, that is the trial and that is the verdict. And if they don't get the verdict that they want. See, right. The thing with Rodney King is that it was kind of a similar thing as you watch it, but then you had experts not in uniform and other experts saying, well, someone under the influence of that size with a history of resisting, the police are going to do everything they can. And they were allowed to go because of the law. And like I said in my first answer to you, under the law, these are the procedures. If it's necessary to change the laws, then we should change the laws, okay? But, the thing is that we want to find out what happened, and we want to apportion justice, and we want to apportion a penalty. So everybody needs to keep calm. But of course, there's going to be plenty of these people, these race merchants out there, the liberal media, they're going to enjoy this, okay? I hate to say it, but it's true, okay? They don't have Trump anymore. They need something to keep things going. And of course, somehow the police officer somehow in some way is connected to the Trump movement. And they're going to do that. They're going to at least imply it. Okay.
Right, that's right. No, that's the peculiarity of all this is that, you have these police departments, racist police departments that are led by Black police commissioners. You have Black mayors. I mean, so it's still, you continue to, oh yeah, of course these are all racist. Well, but they're led by Black leaders. We have Black cops. But there's a problem here, which is that how then can you guarantee a fair trial? I mean, if you have a situation in which jurors openly say, look, I can't acquit. You know, if even if all of the evidence is overwhelmingly that this person is innocent, I can't do it because I'm afraid for my life. Then you have to think, what happens now? You really, it's kind of, you know, the end of any kind of a criminal justice system. And
That's
in
right.
this case, the case against Chauvin is very weak. I mean, again, as I say, the media have done a very bad job in not really, you know, illuminating all of the weaknesses of this case. And so, you know, there will obviously be a case of, you know, the jurors will have to think about this and say, you know, what do I do? I mean, the evidence doesn't prove his guilt, but, you know, I don't want to get killed myself, so vote for
And
guilt.
yeah, and with that element of fear, it'll all be built into, you know, the case. It will be somehow biased, or and no one, of course, is going to question the proceedings of how these are chosen. I think it will end up being a real sham. And I mean, even if the suspect gets a manslaughter, the country will burn. If he gets second degree, the country will burn. I mean, it's already pre-planned in a sense that, you know, because I remember the violence in Los Angeles, okay, and that is really terrifying, and we could see it across. And plus, you know, you have these like Antifa people. Do you think they're satisfied with Joe Biden? Of course they're not. Okay, because their cause, this chaos that they want to sow, is so much bigger than Joe Biden. Believe me. Okay,
Right.
so I think that, you know, we're off to a very bad start, but it was certainly predictable. And of course, we got to have to keep an eye on serious people covering this and not the mainstream, because you and I, there'd be people watching our video right now and say, oh, I didn't hear about that. I didn't know about that, because it's not told.
No, of course not, because you know, it's hardly being noticed. You really have to follow things on the internet. But again, if you remember the Rodney King situation, is that the jurors acquitted the police. Now, you know, you can blame the jurors. You know, you think maybe the jurors were racist, maybe the jurors were very biased towards cops. I mean, happens. Remember the case was actually moved to another location because they didn't think the cops would get a fair trial. So they moved to another location. And so this was more, the trial took place in the suburbs. You know, suburban people were kind of afraid of a sort of a Rodney King type person. So, you know, whatever the reason, but what happened is then the federal government stepped in and retried the cops. You know, now, oh, it was a federal case. Now
that was a civil suit. Yes, a civil.
Well, it wasn't a civil suit. It was a civil rights. It was a, you know, civil rights.
That's what I mean. Civil rights.
Violation of civil rights, but they still went.
It wasn't criminal. It was.
Yeah, that's right. They still went to prison. But the point is that, you know, then, you know, people rejoice, good. Now they're back. They're in prison. However, it is a fundamental violation of the principle of double jeopardy. I mean, government gets one shot at you. But you know, whether you like it or the verdict or not, you get one shot. Because otherwise, governments can just go on trying you forever and making their case stronger and stronger, because now they're finding out all the weaknesses in the defense's argument. It's very undesirable, but this could easily happen in this case as well. If Chauvin is acquitted, I don't think it will be, but if he is acquitted, the federal government will immediately step in and bring civil rights violation charges.
I wonder, as this goes forward, if it's going to be just as polarized as OJ, because, you know, I think Netflix has a series on. It's actually really quite good. Okay, I really enjoyed it. It was very factual. But you know, when it was portrayed, and I remember I saw the white Bronco. Everyone, I saw the white Bronco on the freeway. I saw it myself. You know, people just were decided way in advance. Okay, I am not. Okay, I want to see what the trial has to say. Okay, like I said, my default position, George, is any suspect that dies in the custody of policemen is a very, very bad thing, tragic thing, maybe possibly even criminal.
Right.
But let's keep an open mind. And again, I'll probably be attacked for saying this. You have to take into account the history and the character of George Floyd as well. Okay.
Right.
I think it's really sad that the Black community always picks these people as heroes. Okay, I think that's there's so many other real heroes in that community. All right, and this is what Candace Owen had to say once on one of her segments with, I think it was Tucker Carlson, and I thought that was a really interesting observation.
Right. No, I think that's right. I think one has to be fair because, we can set on one side, okay, we've got the autopsy report, which I think favors Chauvin. We've got the Minnesota Police Department procedures that favor Chauvin. I mean, the stuff that doesn't favor him. I mean, the fact that he kept his knee on his neck for such a long time when he seemed to be, Floyd was now completely subdued. I mean, this wasn't the case with Rodney King. I mean, remember, King kept, I mean, no matter how much they hit him, he kept getting up. I mean, he was a big, strong guy.
It's so interesting that you say that, because that's what I kept saying. Just why doesn't he stay down?
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think he was high. I think he was on PCP. But which I think again fueled the cops' fear of him. I mean, this is a huge guy who's on PCP, and therefore, if he gets up and he goes after one of them, I mean, again, he's much bigger and stronger than any of those cops. So I think that's kind of what led to this constant beating of him.
Just a little footnote, in I'm kind of re-rolling the film in my head, the video. I remember next to the cop was an Asian cop. Okay, there was, it's interesting because, if you zoom in and you have the black and white, but if you zoom out, then it's a lot more multicultural. You have I think there was maybe a Hispanic cop as well during that whole thing. So you had a white guy, Hispanic guy, an Asian guy. So if you wanted to say that all cops are racist, ergo they're all white, it's ridiculous. And as you rightfully point out, and I've said it so many times on Crosstalk, they're black mayors, they're black police commissioners. I mean, this structural the structural racism people talk about is nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. Okay.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And I mean, this is certainly the case with George Floyd as well. But yeah, I mean, again, you have a media problem. I mean, part of it is obviously their political biases of the media, but partly I think it's a business model. They have a business model that tends to favor prosecutors, tends to favor them and say, they always take the side of it, the prosecutors, and therefore they say, they've got a really cast iron, absolutely solid case. The defense is hopeless, the arguments of the defense are hopeless, and then shock that there's an acquittal. I mean, the same thing happened in the O.J. Simpson. I mean, the trial went on and on forever, but the media were presenting it as this was a cast iron case, and that Simpson is done for. They're going to find Simpson guilty. So it came as a huge shock, I think, to the public, which only followed it vaguely. It didn't follow it every single day. And then
a lot of people did. A lot of people did.
But hey, the jurors. Remember, the jurors took only 1 hour to decide that case. 1 hour. They're ready to acquit Simpson. So, and again, I mean, another case was, I just mentioned the one with Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman. Again, media, absolutely, cast iron, guys guilty as charged. Again, huge shock when Zimmerman was acquitted. So, I think, it is a problem when people are so ill-informed about criminal trial and how complicated they are. I mean, all are very, very forensic evidence and police procedures and so on. These are very, very esoteric issues.
It's not Law and Order.
Exactly. Law. That's right. That's right. Law and Order, because they of course all win their cases. Wonderful.
Yeah, and plus they have what 40 minutes.
That's right. Exactly. So yes, and there's always the Perry Mason moment. That's
okay. I dark foreboding on this one.
No, I think it really is. I mean, it's hard to see how, in any way, justice can be done, and that's a real problem, because, as the old saying has it, justice must not only be done, but justice must be seen to be done. So it's hard to see how justice will be seen to be done.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Remember, we are on Rumble. Please look us up on Rumble, and we will be back. And remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.